Welcome home. I'm Dr. Thema, a minister, licensed psychologist, and sacred artist, and this is Homecoming, a podcast to facilitate your journey home to yourself. While I will provide weekly inspiration and mental health tips, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy. I'm so excited you're on the journey. If you want to request specific topics or share your progress, email me at homecomingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, after you listen, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin.
Welcome home, co-journers. I am glad that you are on the journey with us for another week and another episode of the Homecoming Podcast. And I hope you all are writing your poems about your homecoming journey. You can send them to me at homecomingpodcast@gmail.com. And on this week, our topic is growing pains. Growing pains. So many people, when they think about healing or growth, recovery, or change, we often paint a very rosy picture, a very upbeat picture, and we talk about, all of the benefits, which are important, right, to acknowledge, that people will talk about. I feel more free. I feel more connected to myself. I feel aligned. I feel like I'm living from my values. I feel empowered. All of these positives, which are important. And I also want to name the truth that healing can be painful, that healing and growing can be uncomfortable, which is why so many of us avoid dealing with issues because of the discomfort. Many of us even have started therapy and dropped out because it got uncomfortable. And so one of the important things for us to name as we think about this homecoming journey is that healing can be difficult, challenging, stressful, painful, activating, triggering, and this is not an easy road. And so I want to honor you for even being on the journey and continuing with it. I know several of you have written and talked about having to listen to a number of the episodes multiple times. A number of you have shared memories and tears that have come up as you are doing this work. And so I really wanted to take sacred pause this week to identify the ways in which growing can be painful while we still believe and advocate and know that you're worth it, right? That you're worth it, that we are worth it, which is why we are doing this work. And one of the ways that growth can be painful is that it causes us to look at painful memories and painful truths. So it is the unpopular truth, the unacknowledged truth, that we start to see some things in ourselves that we may have been in denial about. And the reality is we also start to acknowledge some truths about our relationships, about people in our family, about our history, even about society, that critical consciousness, consciousness raising is a part of feminist therapy and liberation therapy, is us taking off the blinders and really seeing oppression and trauma and bias and bullying and harassment and stigma. We start to see those things that often society would like us to pretend do not exist. And so that is the painful truth. And it also causes us to ask ourselves some questions that we may have avoided, because in a lot of ways it can be easier to hide behind I don't know, right? That, well, what happened or what is happening or what are you doing? And so we can cloak ourselves in confusion in the blanket of denial, which allows us to continue to operate on some toxic jobs, in some dysfunctional family systems, in some unhealthy relationships, as long as I can stop myself from really seeing what I see and knowing what I know. But once I know some things, it puts me in a position of having to do some things about what I know. And so it is painful to see the things that are not pleasant or neat or beautiful or healed, but for us to see the ragged edges, for us to see the shadows, for us to see the ways in which we have disappointed ourselves, sabotaged ourselves, and the ways that other people have mistreated us, even under the covering of love or of care. And so it is important that I honor that by naming it, because if not, some of you who are on the journey, when it gets painful, may say, I must be doing it wrong, right? Or something must be wrong with me, that, growth was supposed to be like daisies and meadows and springs. And sometimes healing is messy. Sometimes when I'm healing, I can become undone, right? That I am no longer holding it together. So it's amazing when I am in a broken place, it can be packaged very well. And then when I start doing this healing work, in a lot of ways, I can feel like my emotions are more all over the place. I can feel like I am more exposed or vulnerable. And that is a part of the journey and the process. It also is awkward because it is unfamiliar. So many of us, if we're honest, our dysfunctional habits we're good at, right? It can be dysfunctional, but like I've been doing it all my life. So it comes, quote unquote, naturally to me. It comes easily to me. Some of us turn to dysfunction, and it's not even a conscious decision. It's just the way when we're scared, this is what we do. When we're stressed, this is what we do, and we can come to believe that's even who we are. And so to stop that cycle and that pattern, to start doing something different when I'm under pressure or stress, to start doing something different when I am depressed, it will feel very awkward, right? Because it's like, who does that? That's not me, but who I identify as me is the way that I have been operating outside of myself. And so healing can actually be awkward. It's not always smooth or graceful. As I'm healing, I may find myself in conversation and have to stop myself in the middle of a sentence, in the middle of a story, because I don't want to talk like that anymore, right? I don't want to engage with people like that anymore. So it can sometimes be abrupt of like, oh, wait a minute, I have to go. Or, I'm kind of done with that conversation or engaging in that way. And so it is that awareness of myself and then being empowered to shift out of those patterns that can feel very awkward. So if it's feeling a little messy to you, or for some of you may say a lot messy, if it's feeling awkward and unfamiliar and different, that's the growing, right? That can be a part of the growing. And that puts us in a place of humility, right? Some of us were experts in our dysfunctional patterns, right? We could teach it to other people. We could show people how to do it. We may have even advocated or encouraged other people to do the dysfunctional things we were doing. And so when I shift out of that, it really humbles me. and puts me in a place of learning. It puts me in a place of needing to be teachable. It puts me in a place of acknowledging I'm not an expert in this, right? I don't have all the knowledge in this, that this is new to me, right? And that's for some of you who are entering into relationships or trying to heal your relationship, that there can be a newness and awkwardness and uncertainty, and that's okay, right? You're in new territory, but you have concluded the old territory, even though it was familiar, was not healthy, right? Was not how you want to live. And so, we humble ourselves and start to walk this new path. The other part about growing pains is it involves some losses. So the truth is, and I shared this in another episode, is some people will not like the new you. Some people liked when you were a doormat. Some people liked when you agreed with everything they said. Some people liked when you had no opinions. Some people liked when you were high all the time. Some people liked when you were caught up in superficial things that don't really matter. And so when you get to a place, and some people liked when you lied about everything being great and fine and wonderful. But when you start being honest, it will make some people uncomfortable. When you shift out of old ways, habits, or behaviors because they don't serve you, some people will feel judged by that because you're not doing what they're doing. And so they will want to make negative comments about your changes because they feel within themselves, if you're not doing that or talking like that, then something must be wrong with them, or you must have a judgment about them. And so uh, you will lose some people as you grow. And that's not a lot of, we don't usually advertise that. We don't, we talk about all the great things that'll happen when you come home to yourself. But I want you to know the truth, that when you come home to yourself, you often have to leave some things behind, some mindsets, some habits, some ways of relating won't fit anymore. When I start to tell myself the truth, then places that require me to be that other person, I'm not going to fit in anymore. And so people, some will grow and transform with you. And some people have had those friendships or relationships over the years, and they have grown and changed together. And that's a beautiful thing. And then some things will just be for that season, that season of my life is over, that I am ready to come home with myself, and I'm aware that that will come with some costs, right? I am aware that it will come with some costs because when you heal, there's a ripple effect. And so it doesn't just impact you, but it affects the way you show up in the world. And so some doors will close and some other doors will open, that some will walk away and then some new will walk toward, you know? And so there is that shifting in the phrase I have given you all before: release to receive. To come home to myself, what am I willing to let go of so that I can receive the fullness of my authentic life? And so I want to name that. And I also want to name that for some people, there is a loss of time. Some of us, some people kind of keep it moving as they're healing. And some of us, there is so much to unpack that you may feel stuck or still in your healing process. And giving ourselves, if you are able, the luxury of time. And some of us, it wasn't a choice to give yourself time. It's just your mind stopped cooperating with you, right? So it forced you to be still. And so whether you have been taking time for your healing or your mind and body have demanded that you be still in this season, I want you to know the time that you are spending on your reflection, on your growth, and on your journey, that you're worth it, that your wellness and your healing, that your growth is worth it. And I want to name that a part of the growing process also will involve some missteps, some regression, some retreating, that even if you have a setback, that does not erase all your growth. And I know that, especially those who are listening, dealing with addiction, that sometimes there is a relapse. And even though after a relapse, we're starting at day one numerically in terms of counting your days of sobriety or what have you, but that you are not completely starting from scratch. And so I want to extend really grace for those of you who may be beating yourselves up or feeling like, have I really grown when I have gone back to this person or gone back to this behavior, or when I found myself in a conversation that I should have known better, all the shoulds. I should have known better. Why did I call them back? Why did I go over there? Why did I do that? And so I want you to know those moments, those seasons do not erase the growth, that you have greater self awareness. And because you have taken the steps before, that is evidence for you that you can do it again. And so that is a part of the journey, the being pulled back into the familiar, right? So when you find yourself acting like the old you, or talking like the old you, or thinking like the old you, it does not mean that change is not happening. Change is a slow and subtle process, and it usually is not just like, you know, uh, instant, dramatic, immediate, and like never again. Like now it's the new me, and the old me is completely gone. But it can be a challenge, a push and a pull, a struggle, a dance. You know, two steps forward and one step back. Right, that can be a part of what your transformation looks like. And so, not to be so harsh on yourself on the journey. So, what can we do about growing pains? And in the physical sense, when people are having growing pains, they recommend stretch and massage. So, I want to use those symbolically to say stretch, meaning leaning into your growth, right? Stretching into your possibility, even though there is some discomfort there, even though it's unfamiliar, even though it is humbling, right? Even though I can feel tight or rigid, that I continue to stretch. And when you stretch, a muscle, over time, you begin to see that my growth occurs, right? I can start to see my flexibility. I can start to see my endurance, but I have to continue stretching even though it is uncomfortable. So I want to encourage you to continue on this homecoming journey and to not give up on you or on the process because of the tension that is there. And then the other piece they recommend, along with stretching, when you're having growing pains, is massage. And so I invite you to nourish yourself, to comfort yourself, to soothe yourself in healthy ways, to show love and kindness and compassion toward yourself. I invite you on this growing journey to think about ways to be more gentle with yourself, gentle with your thoughts, gentle with the way you talk about yourself, gentle with your actions, your expectations, your timelines, and even the weights that you put on yourself or that you allow others to put on you. And so when we are compassionate and gentle with ourselves as we continue stretching toward home, then we are able to see the progress that is happening in our own lives. I'm excited that you're on this journey, and I know it is not always easy, that it can be very challenging, but here you are and you continue to show up. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have you on the journey. I invite your soul to tell your heart, mind, body, and spirit, welcome home.